Jacob Riis was a Danish-American social reformer, muckraking journalist, and social documentary photographer known for using his photographic and journalistic talents to help the impoverished in New York City, the subject of most of his prolific writings in photography. Riis immigrated to America in 1870, at 21 years old, to pursue employment as a carpenter. After some time suffering in unemployment and poverty, Riis was recommended for a short-term contract with the New York Tribune, in which he performed well and was offered a full-time job as a police reporter. Recognizing the value of the new invention of flash photography, Riis recruited Dr. John Nagel, Henry Pifford, and Richard Lawrence to photograph the slums and squalor of immigrant communities. Riis was one of many who sought prosperity in an industrialized environment after the Civil War. He encountered unemployment and terrible living conditions in New York City, often having to sleep in public areas and surviving only on handouts from local restaurants. In The Making of an American, an autobiography, Riis describes his early years in New York and his disdain for the poor, industrialized conditions.
People were crowded in. There were windowless tenements. Sometimes you had no internal plumbing, just privies in the basement, in the backyard. And the Lower East Side during these years was the single most crowded place in the entire world.
He often photographed New York at night near the notorious Mulberry Street, documenting the hardships faced by the poor and criminal. Besides advocating for improvements in city housings, Jacob Riis's work did much to improve the lives of children and immigrants in New York City. Riis heavily advocated for the placement of parks and open spaces near neighborhoods to improve the quality of life of city children.
My name is Jacob A. Riis, and this is how the other half live and die in New York City.
Jacob Riis's book of pictures and journalisms, How the Other Half Lives, showed how awful life was for the poor that lived in the tenements, which were crowded, dirty, and full of disease. He also provided statistics about New York poverty, like how in some tenement buildings the infant death rate was 10%. This shocked the wealthy people of New York City.
There is another reality, that all that prosperity didn't trickle down all the way to the bottom, and there were some deplorable living conditions, and this country was not just forced to confront those conditions, but then was moved to begin to deal with them.
How the Other Half Lives will go on to sell more than 28 million copies. Thanks to Jacob Riis's heavy campaigning for improving city conditions and providing healthy development for children, the worst of New York slums are torn down within 2 decades. Many New York public schools build playgrounds, and landlords also begin to build toilets on the inside and not the outside of buildings. Jacob Riis's work is the first step in improving and sanitizing the new American development of cities.